I'm Katie Wood, and today we're here at the Fairview Mental Hospital, which is currently under reconstruction into a residential and commercial area called Pringle Creek Community. Today we're talking with Dean DeSantis, who is owner and president of DeSantis Landscaping. Hi Dean, how are you doing today?
Great, thanks.
Wonderful. So what is so special about this commercial project that you have going on here?
Well, it's primarily a residential project. We've got 140 home lots that are being built here, and I think it's probably one of the greenest projects, not only in the state, but probably in the country. It's 32 acres, and they've really focused on the natural beauty of the site and keeping it as pristine and green as possible.
And another big part is water conservation, right? We're thinking about how to use water and reuse water and
definitely.
Like that.
That's been something. There's actually no stormwater system in the entire community. There's all sorts of studies that have been done to show, how much water the soil can take.
Well, let's go check some of these areas out.
All right.
Sounds great. So here we are at one of your rain gardens. What is actually the function of a rain garden here?
Well, the rain gardens are part of the stormwater management system that we've got going here at Pringle Creek. At every intersection, there are 8 of these, 2 at each corner, and they handle any of the runoff that isn't absorbed through the porous asphalt pavement. And what we've got, the plants in here are your typical native wetland plants that you'd see in any boggy kind of area around Oregon. They're rushes and sedges that are in the rain garden.
And what is this soil that you have them planted here? Is this a special mixture or
Actually,
something
it's the native topsoil. We've got a stockpile of the native topsoil that's been excavated out, and we've stockpiled that, and we're putting that now back into this rain garden. There's the way it's built is there's about 12 to 18 inches of drain rock, and then we've got another 12 to 18 inches of soil on top of that. So it's got great drainage and can handle a lot of water. In a year or so, this thing is gonna be completely full of grasses throughout the entire swale here. It's really just a small swale.
Okay. So earlier you mentioned the roads. There's something special about these roads. It's not your typical pavement. What did you call it before?
It's porous asphalt. Yeah, the water when it hits the pavement typically, and this is one of the biggest problems in an urban area, residential street, is that you've got so much runoff of the asphalt. And with porous asphalt, the water just percolates right down through the asphalt and into the soil. So let me show you a little bit here. Yeah, a little demonstration here.
Wow.
There it goes. With the creek over here, we don't have water, being diverted and run into a creek or waterways, which is fairly typical in other developments. So this, in combination with the rain gardens, we're able to handle all the natural rainwater right here on the street.
Puddling and
exactly
small lakes forming in people's yards.
Right. Yeah. Typically, you'd have like a street sweeper. Well, here they'll have a street vacuum, because if you get too much dirt and soil into the pavement, it's going to clog up the street, and that's going to not allow the drainage. So they'll be sucking the dirt out of this pavement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is Pringle Creek Development. Obviously there's a creek that runs through it, and you're now currently planting plants along this. Why exactly are you doing that? What is its purpose?
This is the riparian area that we're planting right here. And as you can kind of see, it just used to be just, Himalayan blackberries that are growing up here. And so we've come in and we've cut down those invasive plants, and we're planting with a native planting. So we've got things like red alder and western red cedar and some willows that are in here. And those are the plants that are accustomed to the amount of rainfall we get here and just the climate that we've got in the Willamette Valley. So this will grow up and be a pretty solid, almost a hedgerow along this here. It'll be a great habitat for birds and for small mammals. It'll be something where the water will be able to, it'll filter through that riparian area before it gets to the creek. So there's a lot of benefits of it.
And what about those invasive plants? Are those going to continue to be a problem?
Yeah, this blackberry right here is going to be right back in the springtime, and we of course didn't want to spray right near the creek here, so it's going to be a maintenance issue, and it always is with a riparian area like that. So we'll be in here clearing that out once the blackberries grow back up, and Eventually, the natives will be they'll be stronger and established, and we'll be able to control the invasives just with the plantings there.
And over here on the left, we have another little trench going on. What's happening over here on this side of the road?
This is actually an overflow that when the creek rises very quickly when you get a heavy rainfall. And so the pathway here is low enough that the creek flows over into this overflow. And so we're doing the same kind of planting along here, the same native plantings. And part of it is, you know, the benefits of the riparian area that I just mentioned, but also just from a safety perspective, you've got a walking path that's being put in here. And, you know, if kids are riding their bikes or something, that's a pretty steep bank, so we want to create a buffer there so that kids don't fall and slip down into the swale.
So all over the site, you have these tubes popping up, and this is the end of the irrigation, right? Or
yeah, this is actually where we'll connect the head, the sprinkler head, onto this what we call a funny pipe. And that pipe can move around so we can place our head right where we want it. This whole system is really pretty unique in that it's an irrigation and also it's a geothermal heating and cooling system. It's kind of a hybrid. In the background here, you can see that the smokestack back there, right at the base of that is a well that pumps about 250 gallons a minute. And so what we've designed here is a system that pumps out of the well, goes into the homes and the commercial buildings to be used for heating and cooling. It goes through a geothermal heat pump. It's not hot water that we're pulling up out of the ground, but the heat pump actually takes the energy from the water and creates hot air or cold air for the homes and commercial buildings. And then when it does its job there, it exits the home or building and goes into our irrigation system, which waters the plants and the turf and everything. And what's not used for the irrigation goes back into an injection well and back into the aquifer and kind of closes the loop. There's kind of a double use of the water. Another benefit, you know, we've minimized the use of PVC. We've basically used 50% of the PVC that we would normally use with two standalone systems. So we've saved a lot of, as well as a huge energy savings by, you know, combining the two systems.
so here we are at one of your mature landscapes that you've done. This is Pringle Creek. Explain to us how do you use this creek in the landscape to really help the plants grow, and what happens when the creek overflows and things like that?
Great, yeah. You know, really, the creek is, we view it as a, you know, an awesome feature in the landscape. And but it does, yeah. When it rains real heavily, the creek rises up very quickly, and so we've got areas over here that used to just flood out over the turf and flood plants, and we've created a dry creek bed so to handle that overflow and direct more of the water back into the creek bed itself.
From the plants, the fertilization up on the yard and in the lawn, does that affect the creek at all or pollute it or anything like that? Or
Very much so. That's really one of the biggest problems that we've got in the Willamette Valley. In the Willamette River, a lot of, you know, is the runoff from, you know, golf courses and farms and homes with the fertilizers and pesticides running off into our waterways. And so on this property, we haven't used any pesticides or synthetic fertilizers for over 2 years. And as you look around, you just, I mean, it's pretty amazing because most people think of it as like, you know, oh my gosh, you know, if I don't use, you know, Roundup to kill those weeds, it's gonna be a weed patch.
in the fertilization, you also have something called compost tea. I understand. What
Right,
exactly
yeah.
is compost tea? How does that help?
Compost tea is it's kind of a blend. It's a brew, literally, of lots of the good biological critters that are in the soil. One of the keys to good landscaping and good sustainable landscaping is to have good soil conditioning. If you've got a really packed, compacted soil, you're not going to get good drainage. Your water is going to be is going to puddle and run off. If you've got a nice, a good soil that's got good biology, those little critters are creating little tunnels through there and creating better drainage.
How do you find out what type of soil you have or what type of compost tea you need? Is there someone you can talk to, or
Yeah,
how does that work?
Yeah, there are soil labs, and that we use soil labs ourselves. We take a soil sample, and they give you a little bag that you can send to the lab, and so they come back with a soil analysis that tells you, the different elements that you've got in your soil, which would then tell you, what additives you might need into your soil. And when we actually brew compost tea, we take that soil sample and we can brew a tea to exactly match what the soil needs. So we can bring it back to a good balance. Essentially, it's a big tea bag. It's a big cylinder that goes into a 500-gallon brewer, and it's aerated, so the water just goes around, and it's basically like tea. It's steeping, and so all the good stuff is coming out of that compost and creates this really powerful, good biological potion, essentially. Yeah.
Well, how cool.
Yeah.
So a new term that has been thrown out there in landscaping business is xeriscaping. What exactly is that?
Yeah, great question. Xeriscaping is, a lot of people, when they think about xeriscaping, they think of cactuses and rock gardens and things like that. And that's xeriscaping, but it really fits more for the Southwest. Here in the Pacific Northwest, we can do xeriscaping, and really xeriscaping is about minimizing inputs, water, fertilizers. Like if we look along the creek here, we can see some of the native plantings along here, the dogwoods and the willows. But mixed in with some ornamentals to give some color, because xeriscaping here in the Northwest can still be green and lush, but you're not going to get a whole lot of color with the blooms and things like that. So what we've done here is mix in some of those ornamentals to give us the bloom.
Do the ornamental plants attract more pests than the native plants, or how does that work?
That's a great point. Yes, the native plants are much more pest resistant. Again, they're native to this area and they're accustomed to the climate and conditions. But our native plants can really they can handle more of those wet conditions like we have here in the Northwest. Just beyond those dogwood, sort of a reedy rush plant, and that does real well along stream beds and in wetland areas. So plantings like that, they're native, they like the wet conditions, and they don't need any fertilizers. It's the right plant for the right place. So you mentioned microclimates. If we've got a really hot spot in a landscape that's full sun, well, that's gonna necessitate different types of plants than if you've got a real shady area that's in maybe a forest. You've got to, you really need to look at that, and good design. It all starts with good design. You need to be looking at your microclimates, the soil type. All of that goes into a good xeriscape plan.
Another important part of yard management is, of course, watering, but we're talking about water conservation. So today I'm speaking with Brent Stevenson from DeSantis Landscapes. And Brent, you are the irrigation division manager at DeSantis Landscapes, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right, and in irrigating a yard, how do you make it efficient so you're not wasting a bunch of water? What are things that you want to look for and think about?
Well, some of the most important things are, first off, is understanding the soil characteristics of where you're applying the water, and then looking at the ultimate goal of the landscapes. For example, on this site, we're using a highly efficient drip irrigation. We're irrigating each individual plant instead of a spray head or some other manner. That way you don't get water that's over applied and running off, and you see it many areas where water's running over the sidewalk and down the street.
How do you know how much water is needed?
This site is a little more high-tech. We actually have an on-site weather station that monitors wind and temperature and humidity, and by that we can calculate the amount of use